So we've now lost 3 games in a row. I would call it a inept performance from the team. And so everyone gets the microscope put on them.
Yeah.
And I went through it myself as a captain, and you're getting beaten and you're not coming up with results. At some point the critics are going to come. So I think that's just human nature, and that comes with the territory.
Well, thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Queenslander. I'm Adam Jackson, joined as always by Queensland Origin legends Darren Locky and the King Wally Lewis. And boys, I think today's episode we need to get straight into it, dive into the fallout, sift through what went wrong in Origin 1. I don't know about you guys, but to me it was a weird feeling at full time in that game, something I've never felt in Origin. It was almost like a hollow feeling. How did you guys assess it? It was I know, not your usual Origin game. Well,
it felt like New South Wales were always in control.
Yeah.
It just didn't. It felt like the result was always never in doubt.
Yeah.
That may be why we felt like it wasn't your typical Origin where it twists and turns and any team can win it. My analysis was our poor start with our discipline. We gave away too many penalties, which put fatigue into our defensive line, and we started missing tackles, and then we weren't. And then we started making mistakes with the footy. So all of that sort of poor play early in the game just snowballed into the performance we got.
Lockie, I think it was one of those games, as a former captain, I'm sure you felt the same. When you're in charge of a team and things aren't working well, you go to town and you're trying to come up with a reason that why you're not going quite as well as you should be, and the answers to the questions on what's gone wrong. There were quite a number of them throughout the course of the game, and an amount I think that made an easy answer almost impossible. New South Wales certainly dictated terms. They were very dominant up front, and as much as Queensland tried to stop that dominance, it just didn't work.
Yeah, you mentioned that domination of the Blues forwards on the Maroons there, Wal. Do we need to rethink the structure of our forward pack in the wake of that?
Again, I think the performance from all the Queenslanders was skewed by the poor discipline and the errors. So you don't get a true sense of what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And that's taking nothing away from the Blues. They were very good. But I just feel like none of our players reached their potential because we didn't allow them to.
Yeah. And the dominance that they showed in their 6, Yo Crichton and Liam Martin.
Yeah.
I've got to dislike those blokes.
Yeah.
They're very controlling. They dictate terms. The way that they dominated our guys was uncomfortable, and I'm sure our guys put in as good a performance as they were able to. Certainly, though, the size and the way that the New South Wales 6 got around the field to make life very, very difficult for Queensland, I thought that really stood out, became more obvious as the game continued.
Yeah, to win the battle in the middle, you've got to, obviously there's the aggression, there's the intent, but you've also got to fatigue the defence. And I just don't think we ever built that pressure on them. So that's why we didn't get into the arm wrestle long enough with them to break them down, and that's why we didn't win that middle.
Is someone like a Horsburgh or a Jai Arrow or even a Jaden Sewer potential way to fix that aggression, to add a bit more aggression?
Look, those guys are, they're in the frame. They were sort of, I guess that they would have been in Billy's mind going into game 1, and all those guys can do is just play well again for their club this week and see where it takes them. And I'm sure Billy's got a view on what needs to change from a tactical perspective, but whether that means a change in personnel, well, that's another question.
Yeah, New South Wales 6 up front were dominant. I know I'm being repetitive here, but they really did stand out. Isaiah Yo, Crichton and Liam Martin. He's a guy that I like watching his performances. He's tough, he's resilient, he refuses to give up, he makes life difficult for the opposing sides in club football and representative football. And the way that he managed to be completely dominant in the game was one of those things that made life very difficult for the Queenslanders.
Yeah, bear in mind too, Payne Haas had half a training session leading into that game, and then he did what he did. Like, even though he's a New South Welshman, how impressed were you?
I was about to say
advocate for
don't train.
Don't train.
Justin Hodges was right all along. Just don't train.
I was about to say to Lockie, did you learn to dislike him? I mean, he's in the Broncos club that you're in. Yet you must have been thinking, oh, stop this. This is enough. This is becoming extremely painful.
Well, something he's done this year at the Broncos, and probably in consultation with Madge a little bit, and he might have done it last year a bit at Origin, I can't remember, but he tends to get a little bit wider earlier in the game.
Yeah.
So he's just he's running at those, the halves that are making, you're tiring. They both, at Queensland halves, made over 20 tackles. Robert Toia made 24.
Yeah, on debut in the centres,
So they were obviously targeting key players in our team, and that builds fatigue. I think Munster was 24 tackles maybe, and DC was 22, or vice versa. But that builds fatigue, which builds, potentially errors around them.
It also builds dislike from all the Queensland general public that were watching it. They admired what they did, how much work they got through, how dominant they were. But boy, it was something you had to really admire their performance, and it really does increase the level that Queensland have got to go to in Game 2.
And speaking of the Blues middle forwards, one of the key talking points out of it was the Spencer Leniu kickoff. Queensland was kicking off to that left-hand side, but changed tactic when Spencer Leniu came on not to kick him the ball. What would you guys have done? Do you think that's the right or wrong move? Or if you're playing, do you kick it to him? Do you try and bait him? Do you try and get him to make an error?
Oh, I think Billy addressed that on the footy show yesterday. He just said it just happened to be a coincidence. The two times they kicked off the other side, they just seemed to not been able to control or dictate that set in defence. So it was just a message coming down from the coaches, which came from Billy, to say, let's kick to the other side because they're stripping us for numbers. So I don't think that was intentional from the Spencer Leniu perspective. It was just a coincidence. I don't think they got no fear of kicking to Spencer.
No, I agree with you, Lockie. But if things aren't working, you try a different way. Yeah, you kick off to the opposite side. So there were plenty of other things in the game that were very uncomfortable.
Yeah, tough one here for you to answer, Lockie. Which players most under pressure for Queensland? I think Val is, because he played out of position. I think we learnt from Game 1 that Val isn't a winger in Origin level. Like, if he's going to play Origin, he's going to play in the centres. I get that he's so crucial to the team with his goal kicking, but I just got the sense having a bigger body running out of the backfield would have been more beneficial to Queensland. And credit to New South Wales for targeting with the kicks.
Yeah, look, again, I think the performance on every individual in the team when it doesn't play well or it doesn't hold possession, doesn't give away penalties, just skews everything in terms of your analysis of the players. So, had they completed at 90% and given away limited penalties, you'd have a totally different performance from every individual. So I'm just, it's just whether or not Billy goes through and does a review and looks at certain things that the players have done in the game or in their club games and just think that that's potentially going to be, an issue going into Game 2.
Yep. What about Cotter? Cotter was on the edge instead of the middle. Do you think maybe that's a way to tinker with it too? Maybe have that bigger body on the edge and then you can get more out of Reuben Cotter through the middle with his high work rate?
Yeah, well, we were missing a middle forward last year and it showed in Game 3. Game 1 this year, I would say that we still weren't on the size comparison. I don't think we were exactly the same as them, but, there's sometimes if you play with the right tactics, you don't necessarily need a big bloke to get ruck speed. If you have a way of using your smaller blokes, whether it's your outside backs or your smaller forwards, to find whether it's ball playing to get that quick play the ball that you need, so you can change your tactics based on who you're picking.
Yep. And just on Robert Toia, you touched on it there before, like he didn't seem out of place at all. Like I think he exceeded expectations. What do you guys think of Robert Toia's debut?
Yeah, I thought he was pretty good. Yeah. For a young man stepping up to be against the best in the business. I think he can be quite happy with his performance. That was a tough game where not too many things went right for Queensland, but when you have a look at their performance, they did what they could, and I think the biggest challenge still lies ahead to be able to sit down, and I'm sure they'll go through one of those ones, and from Locky you'd agree, the most uncomfortable videos are the ones where you're sitting down after you've lost a game. You're trying to work out what goes wrong. If it was that simple just to come up with an answer instantly, it wouldn't have happened in the first place.
Yeah.
I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
24 tackles. Other than Latrell getting that skill, that like, no one could stop that pass.
No.
Yeah, he kept Latrell quiet. That was his job. He took his time away from him. So I think he did extremely well, and I think his family should be very proud of him.
Yeah, certainly. That's the case, Locky. And considering the experience that he's got on board, that's a wonderful performance.
We had one of our 9 News reporters out there, I think it was Ebony Cavallaro at Nudgee, the night of Origin. They put it on the big screen in the kind of like the dormitory hall, and the kids at Nudgee were going off. So great work by Robert Toia to inspire the current generation of students. But I'll put you on the spot. Who do you think Queensland's best player was in that game?
Yeah, right. You got to dig deep here, haven't you? That's just the sort of performance or the night it was where nothing really went our way, or nothing. We just didn't play well enough to give ourselves a chance. Look, I think Toia was up there. Outside of that,
I thought Jeremiah Nene, that was his best Origin.
Yeah.
He had that big hit on Latrell and he went searching for work. He was really good with those kicks.
Yeah.
Adam, you hit the nail on the head there. He went searching for work. He was in a position where he didn't seem to be targeted all that much by New South Wales, but he went looking for it. And to have a chance to be able to do that, to make life easier for your teammates, and to try and increase the dictatorship of your forward pack, I think that's fantastic. And he would have rested. That's a silly thing. He would have rested very well that night. I think the whole Queensland team would have, but quite comfortable with his own performance.
Yeah, I agree. I think he was probably our best, and I thought Liero was good off the bench.
He had something. Yeah, he had the aggression. His dad Gino was in the stands. I saw him afterwards. He absolutely loves it. Gino from up on the sunny coast there. Just one more on Origin too for the moment before we get to a Maccas moment this week. Bad stats. So 8 out of Queensland's last 10 tries in State of Origin have occurred when the Blues have had 12 players on the field. So why can't we seem to score? Because we only scored 1 try in that last game. In the previous game, the side last year, we didn't score a try.
Well, in a funny way, it might sound strange, Adam, but that's good. I see that as a positive one. When there's not too many weaknesses in a Queensland side or a New South Wales side, and to make sure that you can dictate terms when they're one player down, that's a real benefit. You're making the most of the weakness that exists in the opposition, and to be able to take credit for that, I think the Queenslanders will be happy. They'll probably say that we've got to score more tries when they've got a full number on the field, but certainly to be able to make the most of a weakness is very impressive.
You still got, I think you got to have that mindset of actually trying to fatigue the opposition, break them down, and wait for those opportunities. And look, I would say Game 3 last year we were very good in that department. We just hung in there, got in the arm wrestle. But look, at the same time, while I take your point, Wal, that they've done well against 12 players and they've made the most of their opportunities, you probably have to tweak a few things to try and create more opportunities. There's probably because I just didn't feel like, other than the drop ball from Mitchell, we didn't really trouble their defence a lot.
No, we didn't. So, you're right.
Yeah, that forward pass from Tom Dearden was one that was just marginal when they scored the try. And also, I'd like to see the Hammer get more early ball. Like, you kind of try and get him involved a bit more.
Well, again, you've got to be able to find ways to get him involved as opposed to just standing out there on the left.
Yeah, yep. and marking up against Stephen Crichton. How good was he too? What was with their two injured guys, with their two best players, Payne Haas and Stephen Crichton? Usually it's us that's doing that to them.
Yeah.
There's something in that no training.
Yeah. Well, moving along to our Maccas moment for this week, we've actually brought our lunch boxes in here. So
very good.
We've got it underneath the table. Wal's actually eating the Big Macs out of these before we could get them up there.
Gone.
You can smell it still.
So during the State of Origin series, you can go down to your local McDonald's and you can get one of these Maccas meals, and you get the cups that occur with them as well, right from the 1980s up till 2025, the various ones. And here we go. I'm trying to line it up with the screen. Is that good enough? So we spoke last week about 1991, which was Wal's retirement game. And this time we're going to move on. I think I got the right one there. 1995. So that's
Fatty.
Fatty, the 30th anniversary, which is being used by Billy Slater in Game 1 as a bit of a inspirational theme for this year's series. You're good mates with Fatty. Your memories of his Neville's in 95, Wal?
Yeah, well, very few people gave them any chance whatsoever of achieving success in that game. And I still remember some of the comical moments when the players were first introduced to Fatty. One player, we'll leave him remain nameless, was asked to get back into the lift. This floor was only for the Queensland players. And this particular player said, "I am one of the Queensland players." Yeah. And Fatty said, "Oh, I knew that. I was just having a joke. Come on in, mate." And it became one of the most comical moments in Queensland Origin history. But from there it went to from the giggles and smiles to the first speech that was given by Chris Close.
Yeah.
And he had everyone in tears in that room and talked about what it's like to be a Queenslander, what they're prepared to do as a Queenslander, and what's necessary to win a game. And it was fantastic. The Queensland spirit certainly lived on.
Yeah, you were involved a fair bit there. You were on the sideline cheering on with Fatty when they wrap up the series too. Well, Fatty gets seen as the court jester who hosts the footy show and is a bit of a larrikin, but he's
smart.
Yeah, he's quite an intelligent coach.
Yeah, he is. And he had some pretty handy coaches along the way. Bob Fulton was his long-time coach at Manly Warringah, and Fatty said that whilst they often didn't agree on a lot of subjects, he learnt more during that period from Bozo, which became a real benefit for him. And when he went on to coach at Origin, he said, it's funny. He said, I wasn't sort of bringing up too many of the things that Bozo had a plan on. He said they were the things about what we did as Queenslanders and how good we were. And those players, I think that legend still lives on about what it was like for those players to perform the way that they did and be able to produce one, arguably, the greatest performance ever by a Queensland side.
Yeah, 3-0 over Gus Gould and his Blues. Lockie, I think that was your first year in grade, wasn't it, 1995? Your memories, because the Broncos players weren't allowed to play in that series.
Yeah, well, I was never in contention to play, but I think my memory of that, and I think it is the greatest Queensland win of all time, just, given the odds.
Yeah.
You look at the two teams on paper, and I know you kept him nameless, but I think it's public knowledge. The guy that we're talking about going to the lift is Ben Eichen.
Yeah.
Now, I played with Ben Eichen in 1994 with the Queensland team.
The underage team?
Yeah, underage team.
Yeah.
We were there the night the Mark Coyne scored that try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so next year, I'm going to Queensland Origin training, and he's in the Origin team. It was surreal.
Yeah.
I remember sort of talking to him over the fence at Lang Park before their game in Brisbane, and I think in Brisbane they'd already won the series by then, didn't they? They went Sydney,
Melbourne.
Yeah. So this was,
Yeah.
I remember.
Got to win all three.
Yeah, he was hungover, deluxe.
He was.
Yeah, it just that, and I think we won the game in Brisbane. He scores a try.
Yeah.
Late, I was sitting not far from the pig pen.
Oh, yeah.
So I just turned. What was I then? 95. I was 18.
Yeah, he was only 18 too. Yeah.
So I was having a beer. Yeah. But it was. And I guess you know, I did some time with Chris Close, you know, when he was a manager under, you know, Wayne Bennett and a few other coaches, and like he'd give you a talk at the start of the camp, and you'd want to run through a brick wall, right? And then we go, hang on, we've got 10 days to go to the game, and then sometimes he'd give the final address before we got on the bus to go to the ground, and we'd get on the bus and we'd start wanting to fight each other there on the bus. Like he's great motivational, and he just bleeds maroon. So that for those guys, and I, you know, Fatty, you know, he comes across as someone who just wants to play the comedy sort of bloke, but he's highly intellectual.
Yeah, I often say that Chris Close didn't get the credit that he should have in his performances for Queensland at different levels, this being one of them in Fatty's side. When he first came into the State of Origin side, he and Mal were playing against Mick Cronin and Steve Rogers, God rest his soul, the two finest centres that Australia had produced, and it was wonderful. Choppy just smashed them to bits, ran through them at every opportunity, and it was one of those performances. And I'd played against Choppy in the underage divisions all the way through. He was playing for Beaudesert, and all I could remember was this kid from Beaudesert that was built like the brick Scheisenheisen, and was almost impossible to stop. And he did that early in his career, did it in his A-grade debut for Valleys in Brisbane, and then when he got the opportunity to do so for Queensland, and quite a remarkable performance that just showed what it was like to, what a player often does when he gets an opportunity to produce his best at the biggest level of all.
I think he was he man of the match in the first two State of Origin matches?
Yep.
So like
got them both. He just smashed them to bits, and I remember, you know, Sludge basically said, I think I should be retiring. It's these young blokes that are making life tough. And to see those two, how good they were so young in their footy careers, was quite remarkable, and it promised wonderful things for Queensland.
Yeah.
If there was ever a stink on, he was first.
He was. He could box on. He used to say that his parents had a pub out at Cunnamulla, and Choppy said that's where I learnt to fight. When it was 10:05 on a Friday or Saturday night, you had to get rid of them. So
his trademark was pull the jersey over the head.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
Speaking of biffs, I think that 95 series, in my memory, it contains one of the best biffs of all time. It was at the MCG, I think, in Game 2. And I just remember it was Billy Moore and Greg Florimo. Like, everyone was into it. They're two good mates from the North Sydney Bears. And I think Billy Moore, one of the nicest blokes you'll ever meet, is trying to, like, pretend fight with Greg Florimo. Well, I think Hopewadi's going at it with Denny Moore, who are Manly teammates. And,
Billy and Gary must have been having a fight over who had the worst voice.
It spilled onto the sideline.
Hit each other in the throat.
So that was, we could talk about this 95 series for days. Like, as a kid, that's the series that stands out for me of when it hit home for State of Origin. So, get down to your local Maccas, buy one of these State of Origin meals and get the 1995 Cup at the moment to celebrate Fatty and his Neville. So, thanks to Maccas for that, and I'll just maybe put them aside before Wal takes all the
we can
cheeseburgers.
Eat them now. You won't notice it if we start eating now.
There we go, I actually used to work at the Maccas next to the Cowboys Stadium, the old one, but you would have played at, Lockie, not the new one in the centre of town. You used to go all the way out to the Willows, like Stockland Stadium it would have been called back when you were playing. Yeah, so the Saturday night shift when the Cowboys would play a home game was not fun working at that Willows Maccas because
you went after the game?
After the game, yeah. Because back in the day, the Cowboys would struggle and you'd go to watch the Broncos flog them or that sort of thing, and then you'd have the disappointed fans want to drown their sorrows with some cheeseburgers.
Imagine trying to work at Caxton Street after an Origin.
No.
That would be a lot more difficult. But just one more on Origin before we head to some of the club footy, which is back this week. A lot of talk about DCE's future. Joey John said straight after Origin 1 that Queensland should move on from DCE at halfback. Does he have a valid point, or do you think it's ridiculous to even be talking about this?
I think when you... we've now lost 3 games in a row. And, you know, it was... I would call it a inept performance from the team. And so everyone gets the microscope put on them. And you know, I went through it myself as a captain, you know, when you're getting beaten and you're not coming up with results, at some point the critics are going to come. So I think that's just human nature, and that's comes with the territory. You know, he's the oldest playing Origin player
of all time. Yeah.
So you're going to get beaten like that. There is going to be some questions asked. The best thing that DCE did was come back to Manly and play well.
Yeah.
So I guess time will tell what happens there. But all he can do is worry about what he does this week for Manly.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, Lockie. And he's one game past everyone being pretty happy with his performances in a Queensland jersey the last time out. So certainly when you lose a game, you're a magnetic attraction for criticism. And that certainly is going to play a little bit of a role. But if it is a benefit in any way, shape or form, it will produce the best possible performance from him that he has the next time he goes out in a Queensland jersey.
I think it was quite admirable the way he handled himself too in the sheds afterwards. He spoke to all the media. He's a class act in terms of that. And I think it's ludicrous to suggest that he gets dropped for that performance after game one. So, like, if that's your baseline for dropping players, 7 other players have to be dropped because he wasn't that bad. And also, if you drop DCE for game 2, who becomes the captain?
That's right.
And does that potentially derail the team for game 2? Because then you've got the added pressure on this new captain. They have to deal with that as well as their own performance. So for mine, I just think it would be a horrifically bad decision to change it after game 1, just that one performance.
Yeah, I just think he's come under the most criticism because of his position he's held.
Yeah, as halfback.
And there's probably there's a good handful of players more that probably were well below their best, but the team didn't allow them to play as well as they could.
Yeah.
Well, even when we interviewed Cameron Munster, asked him, is the criticism of DCE fair? And he goes, well, my head's probably on the chopping block too. So he's like, don't just talk about DCE, talk about me. Like, I wasn't good enough. So it was good that Cameron Munster owned it.
And there we were. It was probably one game where we were praising Munster about being in white-hot form.
Yeah.
Producing the best and timing it very well on the eve of Origin. One game later, he's being criticised. So criticism flows fairly comfortable and easily. It's often who's delivering that criticism that's the best question of all.
Yeah, if DCE does get replaced for game 2, what's the most likely to wear the 7 jersey? Is it just Tom Dearden?
Oh, look, if that situation arose, then I would think Dearden, and then I don't know who's after that. I haven't even really thought about it. The other guy that's sort of having a great year as a Queenslander is Fogarty, but he's injured, I think.
Yeah, he missed last week's game against the Roosters.
But I guess this week, I think there's probably when you lose the last year's series and you lose game 1.
Yeah,
I think the coach and to a certain degree the selectors they're looking at what's in the pool. To see if there is going to be any changes. But all those players that played in game 1, all they can do is come out and represent their clubs well. Yeah. And go from there.
Yeah, and if the answer to that question was that easy to answer, we wouldn't have asked it in the first place. It would have been just a natural progression.
How did you guys handle it when they were coming for you at Origin time? Did you almost enjoy it, like rise to the occasion and the challenge of like the critics? Like obviously you guys were amazing at Origin, but you'd have your occasional game that you weren't happy with. And when the critics had a go at you, how would you handle it?
The critics, while you never read everything, you just knew it was out there. For me, it just motivated me to prove people wrong.
Yeah. And I think, while we're talking about the critics that are out there, I think Lockie would have been identical to me. I was my own worst critic. I'd go and I'd watch the game over and be filthy that I didn't perform in some areas of the game where I should have. There were some parts about the game where I didn't display the leadership that I should as captain, and other areas of the game where it was just putting in a performance as the ball carrier or the strike player close to the line where I should have been doing that. And the good thing was in those days as well, a lot of the players used to remind me that I wasn't anywhere near what I was supposed to be putting in. I used to hear it from Gino, I'd hear it from Fatty, you're a Neville tonight, you played like a Neville nobody. And I think, Lockie, you're the same. you've reached a level in the game where it's good to be a wonderful judge and critic of yourself, but it's those that are closest to you that can provide the best benefit of all.
It's human nature to just get comfortable in life, right? And sometimes criticism is, for the best players in our game, it's what they need to get the best out of them.
Yeah. And yeah, DCE actually overtook Petro Sivasiva, who was previously oldest player in Origin, who you would have loved playing with. He was almost like the safety net for Queensland. Like, you always felt comfortable when Petro was in the team?
Oh, I used to whack him.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It was good, very good. He's just one of them blokes you just didn't want to get on the wrong side of him.
Yeah.
Because while he's one of the best, he's probably the best guy you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Does have a switch. When he flicks it, look out.
Yeah, good to hear you say that to Locky, that he would have been the one that was happiest to see Petro in the side. Well, I know the people that weren't happy to see Petro in the side at all, and they're the ones on the other side wearing the blue jerseys. And he used to go, and he was as physical, confrontational as anybody in the game, Petro. And I don't think I ever saw him pick up an injury or laying on the ground after getting belted by the opposition. He was fantastic. I used to love watching him play. He was one of those guys that you'd enjoy having beside you on every occasion.
I remember the big arm guard too. Like, he used to whack with the arm guard.
Yeah.
So moving on to Tab Big Call this week. Thanks again to Tab, one of our great sponsors this year on Queensland. So thanks to Tab. It's time for our big call. What have you boys got for us this week?
Oh, you go first?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's Adam Reynolds' 300th game on Saturday night. It's a Queensland derby, the Broncos against the Titans. I believe in fairy tales. I believe in a fairy tale game to win for Queensland at Origin. And I also believe in a fairy tale for Adam Reynolds this Saturday night. He scores the match-winning try in his 300th at Suncorp Stadium in front of all his family and friends. The Broncos' much-needed win over Gold Coast.
Yeah, it'd be great to see the Broncos remain calm and to have him put in a performance that I think that he'd be extremely happy with at the end of the night. I think he's got plenty of people on side, and certainly he won't lack any determination in this match.
I'm going to go, we're covering this game on Friday night, Dolphins versus Dragons.
Oh, yeah.
Hammer to have a big game at fullback, get a double.
Oh, there you go. And the Dolphins will move into the top 8 if they win that one too.
Yep.
So
that'll be a fair battle of the forwards as well coming up in that one.
Yeah.
There's some dominance there for the Finns, and I think everybody in Brisbane Queensland would love to see that in operation.
Well, you talk about some Queenslanders out there pressing claims. There's
Val.
Josh Kerr.
Yeah.
Jaden Sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few Queenslanders. There's Hammer, obviously, played centre. But
they think Max Plath might be 50-50 for that game. They weren't sure when I was out there yesterday, but they were saying Jeremy Marshall-King will be back. That's a huge in for the Dolphins.
Yeah. Plathy, I've enjoyed watching him.
Yeah.
I really have. He puts in, he has a dig, and I think he's probably got a challenge in front of him, and that's to keep getting better each and every game that he plays.
Well, I think he's a future Origin player.
Yeah, it's just a shame he got injured this year, at the wrong time with that foot injury. Speaking of the Tab Big Call, I got pulled over at the Wally statue ahead of Origin. A few of our young fans were watching Queensland in the lead up to Origin, trying to get pumped up, and they were into me about my big call, which was Val Holmes to kick the match-winning conversion from the sideline. They were into me that I got it wrong. Val Holmes kicked a goal from the sideline right on half-time to get Queensland's first points. So they said, you're so close but so far. So
they into you after the game?
Yeah, they were into me after the game. They obviously had a few refreshment beverages at Caxton Street.
Yeah, Adam, you've got to learn where not to walk in the future, I think.
That's it, yeah. I'll stick outside. But, moving on to the club footy, Lockie. Tough week again for your Broncos after that disastrous loss to DCE and his Manly Seagulls. Are you starting to even question their attitude and their lack of spirit?
Oh, it's frustrating. It's never it was a decade since we played at Brookvale.
Yeah.
4 points. I used to hate playing there.
Yeah.
It was a pretty hostile environment. Mind you, they were missing a couple of players. So on paper, you sort of thought, well, we should be going very close to winning this. It's frustrating. And I'm sure it's frustrating for the players and everyone involved at the club. But it's done now. They just need to find a way to stay together. focus on the process. We put a lot of pressure on, when you're in this situation, a lot of pressure comes on about winning games. Now, if all you think about is win, you don't think about what you need to do to get a winning performance, then sometimes that can be even worse. So they just need to focus on individually what does a good performance from themselves look like and get that on the weekend. And collectively, if they do that, then they'll play well enough to win more games than they lose.
Interesting. It wasn't a comfortable afternoon at Brookvale Oval then, Lockie?
No, we had some shockers.
Yeah, well, I had a shocker there as well. I got sent off. The Broncos got beaten, and we were very dominant in the competition at that stage. We were going along extremely well. I tackled a bloke and Fatty come in and yelled out, "You got to send him off, you got to send him off, Dad, you got to send him off." And the referee did. And I turned around and he said, "I was only joking." I said, "Well, the ref took you on another level there, Fatty." So I got sent off, and I've got to say that I didn't enjoy playing at Brookvale all that much. I'd had a couple before then, and one or two after, and it was just one of those games that had an atmosphere about it that I always used to have a little bit of concern about.
Yep.
There was one game there, I think we were up 24-4 at half time, and they come back in the second half and drew the game. Terry Hill, I think, scored 3. You can imagine what happened.
You would have heard about that.
He was over on my side, and Mick DeVere was outside me, and Tezza just ripped into him. I've never heard a sledger like it.
Yeah, he's the best in the business. Paul Vorton used to say he was the best sledger ever. Once he starts, you're not going to stop him.
Yeah, God rest his soul too. He's not with us anymore, Tez.
Well, the defeat on the weekend was actually the Broncos' biggest ever loss at Brookvale Oval, so you can be happy that you've avoided that. Lockie. Since 91, I think, was the worst loss.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think maybe we, with a couple of outs for Manly, maybe we got a bit comfortable with that.
Yeah, coming off the bye too. How much do you think the changes in the spine, though, have affected the team? So Reece Walsh has been out for an extended period with that knee injury. Ben Hunt started the season. He's out injured. Ezra Mam comes back in. They don't really know who their best hooker is at the moment. They keep chopping and changing. How much...
Well, Jesse Arthur's played fullback
Yeah,
too,
Jesse Arthur, which I think was a mistake. I think Cobbo hadn't been going that bad at fullback. It was almost you strengthened a weakness to weaken a strength.
Yeah. Look, I think when you've got instability around your spine, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't. It's not an excuse to be beaten like that. So, look, I'm confident enough in what I've seen that they're capable of. That if they're willing to individually get their own performance right, that they'll collectively get a good performance this weekend, and hopefully that good performance is enough.
And confidence to bring that back. And I'd like to see that from the Broncos. I think they're not that far away from it. When things go wrong, I think people jump on the bandwagon pretty quickly to abuse them, criticise them, but they're not far away.
Yep. And just two more quick ones on the Broncos before we move on to the Dolphins. A lot of talk about Payne Haas's future. Is he a player that they've got to keep at all costs?
Oh, yeah, look, and I think this happened last time he was coming sort of to the end of his contract, that the manager, I guess wanted to see what his market value is out there. And that's what a manager does. He's going to go... And I think Payne's on record to saying he wants to remain a Bronco, but the manager's got to do his job and go and ask, what's out in the market there to gauge what his value is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I can't see him leaving the Broncos. I think he'll stay.
It's funny how you give them a little bit of a tag, but I think he is a one-team player.
Yeah.
He enjoys it. He loves the part of Brisbane, but does his manager? Well, I'm not sure. Managers always see golden opportunities, a way to make more money, and the possibility of moving them on. So I think Payne will be the one that by his performances they'll stand out. Love watching him play.
Yep. And the Broncos now have fallen out of the top 8 for the first time this season. If they don't make the top 8, is Madge's job at risk? Oh,
look, I think if we don't make the top 8, given what we thought at the start of the year and the early signs, it's obviously, that would be a disappointment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to answer the last question, with what they'll do, whether they'll try and get rid of him or puts him in the sack. But I think that the players will learn more the more opportunities they have alongside him, it'll be a case of being able to learn from the best.
Well, he's got a different approach to the previous coaching cabbie.
Yeah.
It's a different approach to the way he coaches, and so there's an adjustment there from the players. There was early signs that looked like they adjusted early, but going through a bit of a rough or a clunky period at the minute. The only thing I would sort of highlight is the Cameron Ciraldo. Like, he took, the Bulldogs are flying now, but it took a little while for them to adjust to the way he wanted them to play.
Yeah.
Look, I'm confident that Madge can get them going, and soon.
Maybe get Kevy back, have co-coaches, the best of both worlds. An intense coach in Maguire and a relaxed, good-natured coach, laid back in Kevy. There
Don't think that'll be happening.
Yeah, okay. That's my pitch. But, on to the Dolphins now. As I mentioned earlier, that Friday night football game at Suncorp Stadium against the Dragons. The Dolphins win that remarkably. They move into the top eight after they lost their first 4 games of the season. How impressed have you guys been with that recovery after that tough start?
Well, it was a little bit of a tough start. And I think you learn things continuously from a coach, and adjusting to it, and the alteration of the game that they play certainly didn't appear to be all that impressive early in the season, but they look quite comfortable at the moment. And we've got a period here where they look like they're quite comfortable with the role that the coach plays, and the challenges that may have been there for some of the players when the coach says, this is how I want you to play. It's not always easy if you've got to alter your game in any way, shape or form. But if they have the chance to be displaying that now at such a good level, I think the coach would be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, there's been some games where I reckon they look like top 4 material, where they're a tough, resilient team. They've got some forwards that get forward, then you bring in Marshall King.
Yeah.
And the finesse around Toia. Throw in the strike of Hammer,
Herbie,
and then Herbie.
Yeah,
they're a good team. I mean, Bostock's a very good winger, and
I think Avarillo's been better than expected since coming up there.
His name's he used to be at the Bronx.
Asako. Yeah.
Jermaine, he's a really good winger when he's playing with confidence. So their last game, did they beat the Eels?
Bulldogs, remember that? During Origin,
Before that, they beat the Eels. Eels are going well. And so, they're beating some good teams.
Yeah.
And like I said, when they're on, they're a top 4 team.
Yeah, and Lockie, it's been their forwards that have been the real impressive factors. So, I mean, the backs certainly deserve a lot of credit that's come their way, but the way that the forwards, they've had that dictatorship, that dominance about them, and I think whoever they play against, they don't sit and rest easy at the end of the game. If they win, well, they know that they've deserved that success. If they lose, they're going to be feeling extra pain go through them.
And what makes me feel as though the Dolphins are the real deal, they're the only team so far this season to have beaten the Bulldogs, Storm and Panthers. So if you've got those 3 scalps, you're going all right. And just on Azarko too, Lockie, I didn't realise the other day, he's played every game for the Dolphins since they've entered the NRL. He hasn't missed one game. That's been phenomenal because his career was at a bit of a crossroads. Remember, he left the Broncos, he went to the Titans, didn't really work out, and then he came back.
And I was going to say, he's been under a bit of criticism too. I mean, those that have followed, and we all, are able to be critical of some players at different times, but he's copped a bit, and I've given a bit as well and questioned his worth, and have been left with plenty of egg over the face. I thought he's had a good season.
Yeah.
I think he's played his best football under Wayne.
Yeah.
At the Broncos, he was good under Wayne, and you got him back at the Dolphins. But I think Christian Wolf's done a very good job to maintain his standard since Wayne's left.
Yeah, and I don't think it'll be any surprise, Lockie. Most people play their best under Bennett.
Yeah.
Whether they aren't happy, like some old 5'8s about leaving the club, but had an opportunity and watched the way that a whole pile of players, while they were playing under Wayne for the first time, produced their best.
Yep.
It was their finest football, and that went on, and they got to be able to repeat that at State of Origin level.
Yeah, and just before we wrap it up, I think Melissa Downs has to come in and read her news update, which is more important than our show. So,
Is that for 6 o'clock?
yeah, so we have to quickly get through there. No chance to delay that. Just finally on the Cowboys, close win over the West Tigers, but tough draw coming up. So Storm in Melbourne this week. Then they've got the bye for Origin. Roosters away, Titans away. Then they play the Storm again, so essentially twice in the space of a month. What do you think of the Cowboys? They're the only Queensland club in the top 8 at the moment, but are they leaking too many points to be a genuine contender?
Yes, they are. They've got points in them, but if you want to be top 4 teams, you've got to get your defence in order. And to have that lapse against the Tigers the other night, they've got to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Lockie. And Adam, you're going through those games, and I was trying to scribble down quickly how I thought that they'd go in those games, and I put down lose, win, lose. And if you're losing 3 or 4, that really does promise a little bit of a tough time ahead.
Yeah, big test coming up for the Cowboys.
Make or break their season.
Yeah, loving seeing Jackson Purdue in the halves. He's been killing it. So our boy up there in the Cowboys, keep going strong. But Friday night footy, keep it tuned on Nine's Wide Bottle Sports. The Dolphins up against the Dragons. Then we'll have all the build-up to State of Origin too right here on Nine's Wide Bottle Sports. Thanks again for joining us on Queenslander. Tune in next week.